Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, reaching a permanent truce between Israel and Hamas has been made all the more difficult by the terrorist organization's unreasonable demands. Hamas insisted on lifting the closure of Gaza, building a seaport and an airport, an open border with Egypt, freeing terrorists from Israeli prisons, and the paying of Hamas salaries. Israel has been flexible on many of the issues, but stressed that any rehabilitation of Gaza must include the disarming of all terrorist groups in the enclave, something Hamas rejected outright. Many foreign journalists left the Gaza Strip during the lull in fighting. Once out, a few finally found the courage to release video footage they had been afraid to show while in Gaza. Terrorists were seen on tape firing rockets from civilian neighborhoods and near UN facilities. Reporters spoke of being harassed and intimidated by Hamas operatives. Others said they feared for their lives. The Foreign Press Association in Israel, which represents 500 journalists from 32 countries, filed an official complaint protesting the abuse.
Palestinian civilians in Gaza attacked Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zuhri near the Shifa hospital in Gaza. The Egyptian news website VitoGate said Abu Zuhri had to be rescued by Hamas gunmen after the angry crowd blamed the terror group for inciting the IDF military operation. The report cited Egyptian politician Mohammed Abu Hamed as saying that the Gaza Strip is ripe for a revolution to overthrow Hamas. He said that public anger with Hamas was increasing even before this latest round of hostilities, and that Gazans live in fear of the brutal regime. Nabil Zaki, however, who is a member of Egypt's left-wing Tagomoa party, stressed that the Palestinians are partly to blame for their plight because they voted Hamas into power.
Israeli security forces surrounded the home of a wanted terrorist belonging to PA President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah party. Troops ordered Zakaria al-Akra to come out. When he refused to surrender, border police opened fire, killing al-Akra. 2 Israeli soldiers were wounded during that firefight. 5 Arabs were also injured in the clash, and 2 other Palestinians were arrested. A search of al-Akra's home near Nablus uncovered numerous weapons. Israeli authorities said al-Akra had taken part in multiple shooting attacks at Israeli soldiers in Judea and Samaria.
Israeli security services have revealed that the alleged mastermind of the abduction and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers in mid-June has admitted that Hamas funded the attack. Hussam Kouassame told interrogators that his brother, who's a known Hamas terrorist living in Gaza, transferred the money for the murderous assault, and that he then gave the orders for the attack to move forward. The Hebron resident also admitted to collecting weapons and helping to conceal the bodies of the Jewish teens after their murders on land that he'd recently purchased. Kouassame told police that Amir Abu Aisha and his own relative Marwan Kouassame murdered Naftali Frankel, Gilad Sher, and Eyal Ifrach shortly after kidnapping them from a hitchhiking station. The ringleader of the terror cell was preparing to escape to Jordan when he was nabbed by Israeli authorities.
Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter has urged the United States and the European Union to recognize Hamas as a military and political force. Carter insists that Hamas cannot be wished away, nor will it cooperate in its own demise. However, he believes the terrorist organization can be convinced to lay down its weapons if offered the right incentives from the West. Carter has sided with the Arab world for several decades and has been a longtime critic of Israel. He blamed the Jewish state for the recent conflict in Gaza.
Western attempts to bring democracy to the Islamic nations of the Middle East are in shambles. Libya has seen a sharp increase in violence between competing factions. The Taliban are making dramatic inroads in Afghanistan. And recently, a United States Army general was killed when an Afghan soldier opened fire on senior American officers at a military training academy. The slain officer was Major General Harold J. Green, who was the first U.S. general to be killed in an overseas conflict since the Vietnam War. Perhaps the most obvious failure of U.S. policy, however, is unfolding in Iraq, where the fanatical Islamic State terrorist organization is conquering a large amount of territory loaded with strategic assets, while slaughtering thousands of people along the way. Yochanan has more on the new Islamic State.
Yes, Aaron. Radical Islamists took over Karakosh, Iraq's largest Christian city, along with several surrounding towns, sending tens of thousands of panicked residents fleeing toward Kurdistan. Karakosh, home to 50,000 people, has been emptied and is now under the control of ISIS extremists. Other religious minorities, such as the Yazidis, are also suffering tremendous persecution at the hands of the Islamic State. The Yazidis fled to the nearby Sinjar Mountains, but had almost no food or water and were facing starvation. After much foot-dragging by the Obama administration, Washington finally authorized the U.S. military to airdrop food and humanitarian aid to the trapped civilians. American warplanes also attacked ISIS gunmen. Iraq's Human Rights Ministry has confirmed that militants from the Islamic State murdered at least 500 Yazidis, including children, and buried some of their victims alive. And they are said to be holding hundreds of Yazidi women under the age of 35 as hostages. The women will be sold or married off to extremist fighters. And in neighboring Syria, jihadists stoned to death 2 women who were accused of having sexual relations outside of marriage. A local court ruled that Sharia law demanded the death penalty.
The Netherlands is the home of the International Criminal Court at The Hague, and last week it was also the venue for a terrifying anti-Israel rally by hundreds of Islamic State supporters. During the Dutch government-approved demonstration, protesters waving the black jihadi flags marched in the streets of The Hague, shouting "Death to the Jews," and urging its faithful to murder and join the fight against the West, specifically the United States. It's also believed that the radical organization used the rally to recruit people to its religious war in European cities. A Dutch Muslim national serving with the Islamic State fighters was recently photographed standing by the severed heads of Syrian soldiers he claims to have murdered in cold blood.
There has been a dramatic increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the wake of Israel's defensive war against Hamas. Jewish children were the target of a vicious attack in Australia. 8 teenagers stormed a private school bus in Sydney that was carrying more than 24 Jewish students, ranging in age from 5 to 12. The hooligans yelled "Heil Hitler," "Kill the Jews," and "Free Palestine." They also threatened to slit the throats of the terrified little children. Police in the United Kingdom are investigating notorious British Member of Parliament George Galloway after he declared the city of Bradford an Israel-free zone. Galloway has a long history of anti-Israel bigotry. A black flag, similar to the one flown by the radical ISIS terror group in Syria and Iraq, was seen in a London neighborhood. Sister Christine Frost, a 77-year-old Roman Catholic nun who runs a charity for disadvantaged residents, borrowed a ladder and removed the jihadist flag. Speaking of flags, the Glasgow City Council voted to fly a PLO flag as a gesture of solidarity with the Palestinian people. The Scottish city is twinned with the Muslim-controlled town of Bethlehem. Its ties to Palestinian radicalism date back to the time when PLO terror boss Yasser Arafat was living in exile in Lebanon. And finally, the Tricycle Theatre in London has refused to host the UK Jewish Film Festival because the event is sponsored by the Israeli Embassy. The theater has hosted the awards for the last 8 years, but this year canceled the contract due to the conflict in Gaza.
Israel's Operation Protective Edge in Gaza caused a sharp drop in tourism to the Holy Land, but not everyone is afraid to visit the Jewish state. In fact, Christian Zionists belonging to the HaYovel organization believe that right now it's more important than ever to come to the country. 500 volunteers from the United States, Canada, Norway, New Zealand, and several other countries quickly signed up to help Israeli farmers in Judea and Samaria work their land this summer. The timing could not have been better because many Israeli agricultural workers were called up for military service in Gaza, and the Christians stepped in to fill the gap in manpower.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, accompanied by 3 top state lawmakers, made a 2-day solidarity visit to Israel. Cuomo, along with Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver and Senate co-leaders Dean Skelos and Jeff Klein, held high-level talks with Israeli officials and met with residents affected by the Hamas war of terror. Governor Cuomo said that New York has always had a special relationship with Israel, and he added that friends stand together in times of crisis.
It's not Texas tea, but more like Congo Crude. Israeli Dan Gertler says that the Democratic Republic of Congo is sitting on 3 billion barrels of oil. Gertler is the owner of an oil company and reports that a reservoir was discovered near Lake Albert on the country's eastern border with Uganda. It's not yet clear how much of the oil is recoverable, and there may also be difficulty in exporting the resource because the region is hundreds of kilometers from export points on the Indian and Atlantic Oceans. Nevertheless, the CEO of Oil of DR Congo believes that the project has the potential to provide significant revenues and other benefits to the people of the Congo.
Last week, Israelis marked the festival of Tu B'Av, the 15th day of the Hebrew month of Av. The holiday dates back to the time of the Second Temple. The sages wrote in the Mishnah that Jewish maidens of Jerusalem would wear borrowed white dresses so as not to embarrass anyone who did not own a dress. The young women would dance in the vineyards while eligible bachelors gathered nearby in hopes of finding a bride. Today, Tu B'Av is still a time when many Jewish couples plan their weddings. Mazal Tov.
And that concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here once again in a beautiful day in Jerusalem on our rooftop studio. My guest today is Mark Levin, father of fallen hero Mike Levin. Mark, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks for having me today.
Tell our viewers a little about who was Michael Levin.
Michael, my son, was a passionate Zionist who loved Israel with every fiber of his being. He believed that the history of world Jewry would be played out here in this country, that a miracle was unfolding, and he wanted to be part of it.
Michael Levin is what was called in the Army a lone soldier. Tell us about that concept.
A lone soldier is someone who leaves their family, their friends, their country behind to make aliyah to Israel and to join the IDF and to help defend this country. It's someone that does not have any family whatsoever in Israel. And there are over 5,000 lone soldiers, called Chayalim Bodadim in Hebrew, over 5,000 lone soldiers coming from all over the world that are now currently in the IDF.
I was at Max Steinberg's funeral 2 weeks ago. He was a lone soldier, a California Jew who came here to defend the country, fell, didn't have any friends, didn't have any family here, yet at his funeral there were 30,000 people. How is that possible?
I spoke to Max's father just prior to leaving Philadelphia to come here about 5 or 6 days ago, and we spoke about this. And prior to Michael's coming to Israel, the term lone soldier was really under the radar screen. Some people knew that they were young men that came to Israel to defend the country, but the term lone soldier was really underplayed. Since Michael's passing, and since the incredible documentary that was made about him called A Hero in Heaven has been distributed around the world, thousands of copies of it, the term lone soldier and the understanding of lone soldiers has really been elevated, not only in the United States, but in Israel. Prior to this, it was just a relatively unknown term. But in the 8 years since Michael's passing, the understanding, the awareness, and most important, the appreciation for lone soldiers and who they are and what they do and what they've given up to come here to defend this country has really been elevated. I think for that reason, and because of the just expansion and proliferation of social media, those two reasons combined caused tens of thousands of people to come out for Max's funeral.
When I served in the IDF over a decade ago, I was considered a lone soldier, but it's kind of a misnomer. You know, the people of Israel really come together. They become your family. Isn't that the case?
That is the case.
It's something that you don't see in other countries, I believe.
Well, I don't know, but it's certainly a phenomenon here that I don't know if it's repeated around the world, but certainly Israel should be proud of it.
You know, Michael Levin has a foundation now that helps other lone soldiers. Tell us a little bit about that.
Prior to Michael's passing, there was no center in Israel solely dedicated to the needs of lone soldiers. Michael recognized this need. He was also a bit of a visionary, and he approached a friend of his a year before his passing and expressed the need for a lone soldier center, and said that when he finishes his service that he and a few other people were hoping to start a lone soldier center that could help lone soldiers from around the world in their different needs before, during, and after their service. After Michael's passing, a man named Tiki Ode, along with some other lone soldiers, started the first lone soldier center in Israel. And I'm proud to say that today, 8 years later, there are now 4 lone soldier centers, Michael Levin lone soldier centers in Israel. The 2 largest ones are in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and 2 smaller ones in Beersheba and Haifa. And there's a small dedicated paid staff that runs these centers, but there are over 300 lone soldiers who volunteer their time to staff these centers to help lone soldiers whatever they need.
What are some of the activities that they do to help the lone soldiers?
Well, most important is that they help build the lone soldier community. Other lone soldiers, years ago, we constantly, hear from them that we know there are other lone soldiers in Israel, but we never have a chance to meet them. So they're building this community of lone soldiers where they get together for Shabbat meals, for different entertainment activities and facilities. There's also, the center provides counseling for them. The center provides, if they're moving into an apartment, they're looking for someone to share the apartment with, they'll arrange that. If they need appliance deliveries, we have my wife and I bought them a moving truck because they were renting moving trucks 50, 60 times a year. So there's a lone soldier moving truck now that delivers furniture and appliances, washers, dryers to their apartments. And there's just a host of activities that the center provides.
Mark, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
That Israel needs your love and needs your support. That there is a moral imperative today in this world. This war that is starting to wind down now in Gaza is not a question of tit for tat or who shot first or who fires the last shot. It's a moral imperative between right and wrong, between good and evil. And anything you can do to support the nation of Israel, to support lone soldiers, the Lone Soldier Center, would be greatly appreciated. Israel needs your support, and my wife and I are very, very appreciative of anything you can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
This is Jerusalem, Israel's capital city. It's an ancient and modern treasure that is beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
Hamas uses civilian areas in order to protect its terrorists and infrastructure in Gaza. Concealed rocket launchers, weapons storage facilities, and command centers are located in civilian neighborhoods. Some of them are even located inside of houses. Operation Protective Edge has exposed Hamas' distorted priorities. The terrorist organization launches rockets from civilian areas. It also urges civilians to ignore IDF warnings before airstrikes and remain in areas from which they were told to evacuate.
الداخلية كذلك دعت للمواطنين لعدم الاستجابة لتحذيرات الاحتلال.
ندعو أبناء شعبنا الفلسطيني وندعوهم للبقاء في بيوتهم.
ما إنه اثبتوا في بيوتكم كما عهدناكم ولا تستجيبوا لحرب الإشاعات ولهذه الحرب النفسية التي يشنها العدو الصهيوني.
Hamas is encouraging Palestinian civilians to become human shields for terror targets.
أعتقد إنه أن يتعرض الناس وأن يواجهوا الطيران العسكري الإسرائيلي بصدور عارية ليحموا بيوتهم، أعتقد إنه هذه سياسة أثبتت نجاعتها في مواجهة الاحتلال. هذا ما يجب أن يسمعوا شعبنا، احنا مش اليوم نسوق شعبنا للإعدام ونتفرج، لا احنا بنقود شعبنا إلى الموت.
When they encounter IDF forces, Hamas does not hesitate to place civilians in the line of fire, despite the IDF's efforts to minimize civilian casualties.
Anywhere else, this would be a vacation by a lake. But this is the Sea of Galilee. The wonders of Israel are beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
We are here in Haifa at the International Christian Embassy's home for Holocaust survivors. And let me tell you, this house here in Haifa is one of the most exciting projects which the Christian Embassy has undertaken over the past couple of years.
The ICEJ's home for Holocaust survivors consists of 9 buildings in one Haifa neighborhood. This small community serves as a haven of love and security for more than 70 elderly Israelis who survived the Nazi campaign of genocide. Thanks to the consistent giving of Christians just like you, we are able to provide these precious survivors with everything they need. The facilities currently include a synagogue, a medical and dental clinic, and an intensive care wing.
During the 65 years of the existence of the State of Israel, this is the best thing that Christians and Jews have done together. It's beautiful. It's all about this mutual giving and serving. Christians and Jews together. The media loves this. They appreciate the social solidarity that the Christians express towards the Jewish people, and of course towards Holocaust survivors, who right now are in the last decades of their lives. So we need to appreciate them now.
We invite you to partner with us in this important work in Haifa by making a donation today. Your donation will assist us with providing for the day-to-day operational costs at the home. Roughly $1,250 per month per person is what it costs to provide for the basic needs of the residents. Your giving will make a significant difference in the lives of these beautiful people, so please consider how you can financially support us in this important project.
Our goal is to have 150 survivors residing here, maybe even 200 Holocaust survivors. In this very moment, there are more than 1,000 survivors who have registered. I hope that the assistance of the Christian Embassy will be able to give everything we can to these people.
We go outside to eat in the restaurants, we go to the sea. We go to the theater, yes, lectures from the outside. And the food is still good. It is all excellent. Here I have friends, and I'm feeling here good. I am happy here, no?
If you have been supporting our project in the past, I want to personally thank you, because through your help we could host more than 70 Holocaust survivors in our home in Haifa, and as you well understand, once the house was completed, we are still challenged with ongoing running cost of this center in Haifa, and I want to encourage you to please consider to help us with the ongoing cost, but also with the cost to expand that center even more. You need to know that this home in Haifa has an incredible impact in Israel and also in the city of Haifa. Countless dignitaries came to visit us in this center. The media were reporting about what Christians are doing to support Holocaust survivors in the land of Israel. So your donation is not just impacting the survivors, but it actually touches the entire nation of Israel. You need to know that the vision of the International Christian Embassy in Israel is to show another face of Jesus and of the church to the Jewish people. And this is exactly what our home in Haifa is accomplishing. And I want to invite you again to partner with us. We are your outstretched arms and your feet here in the land. We are your embassy here in Jerusalem. May the Lord bless you richly out of Zion.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.